Welcome to the Grow Your Business and Grow Your Wealth podcast with Gary Heldt. Gary is an expert in helping business owners put together a plan that will provide a better future for their businesses, themselves, and their families. On the podcast, Gary interviews other professionals who share his vision, and together they share secrets and strategies any business owner can use to build a better financial foundation for your business and your life.
Hey, welcome back to the podcast. This week, my guest is Jeff Roberts, and he is the founder and CEO of Innovation Vista. Welcome.
Thank you, Gary. Glad to be here.
Great. Jeff, tell us, what does Innovative Vista do?
We are a C-level IT consulting firm. So we provide strategy and leadership services to small and mid-sized clients generally, helping them understand what's possible with technology and what makes sense for their business and their industry.
So give me some of your background. What did you do before you founded the company?
Sure. Yeah, I've had a career in IT from the beginning. Studied that in college, started out my career as a programmer and data modeler. Had a chance to become a project manager and then enter management on the org chart, so to speak. I was the CIO of 5 different mid-sized companies, generally finance and real estate sector, sort of my specialty. And when the last of those companies was acquired by a large competitor, I'd had this idea of starting Innovation Vista in the back of my mind for a while, many years. And I decided, rather than try to find CIO chair number 6, I'm going to start this and try to offer some of these services, some of the things I'd had some success with as the head of IT, as a service. And not only myself, but to also subcontract other experts that I knew in different industries to let us begin to cover. At this point, we're over 400 consultants now in that network, and we cover every major vertical.
Now, you said that you have done this through 5 different companies, and so you have a lot of experience in the industries. What do you see as one of the major challenges now with the small to medium-sized business when it comes to IT?
Yeah, I think there's several, but I think the arms race that is occurring in cybersecurity is probably the top one I would point to. There are a lot of companies out there that believe that the things they were doing 5 years ago are still sufficient, and that there's no real reason to sort of look again or to upgrade their protections. And the truth is that the bad guys have gotten a lot more sophisticated, and they have built their own technology in many ways. And they buy and sell that stuff on the dark web, and so it proliferates, and the risks are higher than they have ever been. And a lot of small businesses, I know of 2 that I've interacted with personally that actually went out of business. And they just could not get comfortable with the idea of looking again, even as an assessment or an upgrade of their protections. And they were hit with ransomware attacks that encrypted their infrastructure and servers, and they were never able to come back to life. So they lost their data, they lost their accounting, they lost their customer list. They were trying to piece things together from who has a printout from last month, and it just, in a couple of these cases, they put them out of business because they could not deliver any longer for their customers. And you talk about a tragic story. So depending on the protections that companies have, I don't like kind of selling by fear, but the risks are real. And if I would say if a company hasn't looked for a while at what they're doing with respect to information security, network security, they need to. And that really ought to keep them up at night until they have done so recently and had it done by someone who knows what they're doing. So that's the number one. There are a lot of things changing really fast. Frankly, the whole landscape of innovation is changing faster than it ever has before. And it's accelerating. So I often say, it's never been this fast, and it will never again be this slow.
Right.
So next year it will be even faster. And so AI and what's happening with analytics, and it's amazing to people that even small businesses are out there innovating the things that are possible just with off-the-shelf solutions now, or a $20 a month subscription to an AI model. That sort of thing is trickling its way down even to impact small business. And some are benefiting and playing offense, and some are being disrupted, and they are hearing from their customers that, hey, we're starting to get this from your competitor. Can you do the same? And if the answer is no, they're at risk of losing that customer.
Right. I think, going through, you talked about the client that had to go out of business. I think that there is a lot of things going on from the theft, the AI, people not wanting to slow down. We're all very fast paced in what we're trying to do, and we really need to slow down with so many things. I have clients that have gotten emails from what they thought was one of their vendors saying, "Hey, send me, wire me this money, blah, blah, blah." And come to find out it wasn't their client. And I think it's one of those things where, working with someone like you to help put in procedures in place, because, you just got to think about it. Sometimes it's like, okay, well, I've never wired this person money before, so why this sudden now it has just changed? But I think, again, because we're so fast paced right now that nobody's slowing down to think about it.
Yeah, no, you're right. I see it as honestly one of the biggest value adds of a consultant is, we have this wider spectrum of what we see and what we've interacted with at any given time. Especially in the virtual fractional world, we're dealing with 2 or 3 clients at a time, typically, most of our consultants. So that's a benefit. And then 6 months ago, it was 2 or 3 different clients often.
Right.
And so that perspective, I wish that the companies that I had seen go out of business were clients.
Right.
They were prospects. And like I said, I was speaking with them about, let us come in. You don't know what you don't know.
Yep.
One of the ways we often start is just with an assessment. And I tell CEOs, look, unless you're a technology person, maybe it's a software company or whatever, that's different. But if this is a blind spot for you, this is the highest risk, fastest moving, most survival oriented risk that you have on your landscape. And it just, if you're going to use a consultant anywhere, I feel I have a biased opinion, obviously, but I feel like it just makes sense here for so many reasons. And in 3 weeks, for something like $15,000, we come into a business, do an assessment, we look at what's there, we turn over every rock, we give them a nice 40+ page report, and the key part is recommendations, not just here's what we think,
Right.
but what we think you should do. And that's with some business sense. We don't go in and tell them to platinum plate everything and upgrade every system because they're not top of the line, whatever. And we look at it from a cost benefit perspective. That's what is sad about those businesses that went out of business because of ransomware attacks is they were speaking to me at least one or two times that we had spoken, and they didn't prioritize it, I guess. Look, it's lessons learned, and I mean, they're certainly not alone. That's two that I know of out of the thousands that studies have shown cyber criminals have literally put out of business.
Yeah. Now, when you're saying to have the assessment done, and you're saying 15,000, I know that's not your quote, but for the 15,000, what size business are you talking about that's because again, people are small, large, and maybe.
Yeah, we do tailor these, and for someone smaller, it's going to look more like maybe 10,000, and maybe it's only 2 weeks of work.
Sure.
So that's sort of our average. We have some that it's been $20,000, and it's taken a full month to look at things.
Right.
So the range of our clientele is generally 20 million up to a billion, all the way on the high end. It's 50 employees, maybe 40 to 50,
Okay.
up to 4,000.
Okay.
So, we have quite a wide spectrum of who we serve. But I think, look, whether it's 10, 15, 20, the value of that expertise, that's a fraction of the cost of an employee.
Right.
And one of our taglines is you get 100% of the expertise for a fraction of the cost.
Right.
And the idea there is our consultants are not newly minted MBAs that are walking in with some kind of documented checklist. They're experienced former CIOs, CTOs, CISOs, Chief Information Security Officers as well. Whatever the situation calls for, that's the power of our 400 plus in the network, is we can match someone. So they come in, they know your industry, they certainly know the technology, they know the risks, they know the possibilities, they know the sort of the cost benefit landscape. And so for the fraction of the cost of one employee, you get this sort of expert view that can really provide a compass heading,
Right.
and either a comfort level, right? If the assessment ends up looking pretty good, you can feel good about your IT vendors that you have in place and the staff. If you've staffed it internally, or a lot of smaller companies especially rely on vendors. We deliver good news when good news is called for, and that makes a lot of people feel good. Even then, we always are able to find recommendations to make things better.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
But where we really add value is where the news is not good, and there are risks being run that they're not even aware are being run. In some cases, we've uncovered actual hacking attempts and breaches that they were not even aware had occurred. Sometimes that's money, sometimes that's information, sensitive information, which maybe it's reputational cost,
Right.
which can be just as risky as financial. So again, my biased opinion, clearly, but I live this every day, and I see enough businesses where when we do these assessments, there are not just yellow flags, there are red flags out there. And if you're a 20 to 40 person business, you might think we're small fry. The bad guys are not going to target us, whatever. I promise you, that's not how they think.
Right.
There are some thefts that are 5 figures, right? Like they get into your email and they read, what are you being billed for, right? What's the typical invoice, and are there particular partners that you're sending a lot of money to? And they are incredibly strategic. And in a few hours of their time, if they can steal $50,000, that's still fantastic ROI, sad to say, on their criminal time. They will do that.
Right.
And so there's really no size business that is safe, I'm sad to say. They're out there crawling around, and what they know is the large and mid-sized companies at this point in time have put in a lot of protections.
Right.
the smaller you go, the higher the likelihood that they will find a way in the back door. So yeah, it's unfortunate.
Yeah, I mean, I believe that outsourcing, especially with the small to medium-sized companies, are the right thing to do because, from my side, lots of time, we have the fractional CFO services, and it's, just like you're saying, hey, for the cost, you're getting years and years of knowledge as compared to hiring somebody in-house. And it's, again, it's pretty much cost prohibitive to have, for a lot of companies, to have that CFO in-house or a
Yeah.
CIO in-house.
And you don't need it, right? Like
Right.
there's not 40 hours of work. You don't
Right.
need that level of expertise to turn the crank on existing processes. And you have middle managers, you have vendors, they're perfectly good. Often they're fantastic even
Mm-hmm.
at doing those things. What they're not as strong at is deciding on the policies, deciding on the architecture, negotiating contracts. We save clients a ton of money just knowing the tricks that are played
Right.
and knowing where there's flexibility. These vendors, if we've dealt with them before, we know what they were willing to give on. We know the price per seat that they were willing to offer someone else. That is incredibly
Oh,
valuable
yeah.
to
Yeah.
know how hard to push. And so, yeah, that's, we talk about the highest leverage points. That's really the high leverage points. And it starts at 4 hours a week. We can add value on those. For a fractional virtual CIO, maybe it's 12 hours a week, up to 20.
Mm-hmm.
Still far less than the cost of what it would take to hire that person. And the benefit of the expertise is just the ROI is enormous in most
Yeah.
cases.
Yeah. And I would think also, because, this person that you would be hiring is on a part-time basis like this, like you said, they're dealing with multiple companies. So they're seeing a whole lot more of different threats and stuff like that, where if you have somebody internal, they can be out, scouring the internet all they want, but they're not going to know all of the different threats just because they're
That's a
not
great point.
seeing as much of it. So,
It's such a great
um,
point, Gary, that and that small businesses especially, we see this pattern all the time where they have a middle manager sort of running things, homegrown.
mhm,
Everyone loves them. They've been around for 10 years, 15 years. That's great
right,
in terms of knowing the rationale of past decisions and where all the bodies are buried, so to speak, right?
right,
Like they know all of that. The trade-off is if they've been there that long, that's all they know.
right.
And I mean, we're talking about how fast the industry is moving and all of that. Knowing what's possible, knowing what's feasible, knowing the path around the block,
Hmm.
where the potholes are, so to speak, right? Like,
Right.
how do you do these more advanced things? You probably never stood up an advanced reporting system or AI model or anything else if you've been with a company for more than 3 years and you haven't done it there
Right.
because you weren't doing that 3 years ago at your previous employer. So,
Yeah. I think that again, there's a lot of new things. Uh, we're going to see a lot more innovation coming, here soon. Um, Besides hiring a company like yours to help with this, what do you see here in the next 6, 8, 12 months, that people really need to be thinking about now instead of waiting?
yeah. AI, so cybersecurity points
Yeah.
earlier, I think
Yep.
we
Yep.
said a lot about that.
Yep.
That is foundational. If you have that covered and you have stability of your systems, we talk a lot about the maturity journey from stabilizing to optimizing to then monetizing. And so if you have that stability, then optimizing is really looking at your data strategically and thinking about how you can use it in ways no one else can because they don't have your data for AI. That is, there's a lot of hype out there, and there's a lot of material, and there are unfortunately vendors out there that are overpromising, and it's giving the industry a black eye to some extent. But there are real things happening also, and things are possible and feasible, and these success stories, like I said, all the way down to small companies, they are finding unbelievable efficiencies. They're taking things that they've got a whole row of people working a particular process, and they figured out a way to automate that and make the human judgments not human anymore, the AI judgments along the way of how to handle different cases. If you can build that, the power of that on the finances of your business, you free those people up. Maybe you've got open jobs you don't even need to recruit for anymore.
Right.
You can transition people to other work, more creative work, more value add and revenue generating kinds of activities. You have capabilities that your competitors can't match. So you're the one that your customers are calling your competitors saying, "Hey, I'm starting to get offered this, automatic analysis sort of thing by ABC. Can you guys have anything like that?" And if they don't, you're the company now that's stealing market share from your competitors. And that moves so fast. I mean, you announce something like that, that's really a competitive moat that it's going to take them a while to try to match what you've done. And in many cases, it takes too long, and they've lost their customers in the meantime. So we love those kind of situations, and the disruption, that word is used a lot, but real disruption is happening, like what I just talked about.
Right.
Either pricing power or capabilities, and a lot of it comes from AI. So CEOs, I would be thinking about it, even if you don't engage Innovation Vista or a firm like ours to help you think about it. Do some thinking about it, and there are real strategic things that are now possible that weren't even a year ago.
Right. So with AI, if people are using AI, because a lot of the things that I've been reading and seeing and stuff is that your information right now that you're putting into AI isn't protected. That again, the articles I'm reading are saying that, hey, if you put it out there, it's out there.
Yeah, that's
Is there a
sometimes the
way?
case.
Yeah.
Yeah, so what they've done is there are different subscription levels on these models. ChatGPT, Gemini, a lot of these major platforms. And the basic level ones are cheap because, as they say, if something's free, you are the
Yeah.
product, right?
Yep.
And so that is a risk. But they also offer higher level subscriptions, which still are pretty affordable, that they have isolated your data. It's not going into their training, and no one else can get access to it. So there are several very embarrassing examples that have happened over the last couple of years. Samsung is the one that jumps to mind, where they were using the wrong level of subscription, and they've been extremely sensitive data, which then became training fodder for the model. And someone else could come in and say, what is Samsung's approach on XYZ? And the model knows.
Right.
Very awkward. But there's a solution for that. Just choosing the right subscription level. Again, just knowing those options that are out there is a key part of this.
Yeah. I mean, I've interviewed a couple of attorneys in this area, and they're saying, one of the big problems right now is there really isn't any litigation on it. So there's nothing that they're able to really be able to have any precedence on. So, they're saying right now it's like, be careful, because obviously you don't want to be the one who's paying the attorney's fees to take this to court, since there's nothing there yet.
Well, yeah, and I mean, these commercial models are built by huge institutions. I mean, it's the
Right.
big players that have the resources to build something like this. And even OpenAI, which is a smaller company, it has the backing of Microsoft and billions of dollars, right? So their lawyers have solve that problem, right?
Yeah.
Like when you sign up, you are agreeing for whatever level you subscribe to. But if it's one of these lower levels where they can use your data, you better believe you've agreed to that. And if you
Yeah.
try to sue them over that, I,
Yeah.
you got no standing whatsoever because you literally clicked the button that said it was okay.
Right.
Yeah.
And I'm sure you don't have the war chest to go toe to toe with those
No,
guys either.
no, not against those guys.
Right. Um, from a technology standpoint, many times I hear people say, "Oh, all my stuff's in the cloud, so I'm good." Can you talk about that a little bit?
Oh gosh, yeah. I chuckle not because it's surprising. I just hear it all the time.
Yep.
It's actually sad. I should cry more so than chuckle because a lot of breaches that we have helped companies identify and have to remedy are on the cloud.
Mhm.
So look, there are controls, there are access controls on cloud resources, just like there are within your network. And I understand there's a lot of terminology in IT, and this is one of those things that really can become a blind spot for business executives that try to read this stuff without having the benefit of someone in their ear who can
Right.
say, you know what that means. And so, but if the access controls on cloud resources are not set right, people can get to those the same way they can get inside your network if you don't lock down those controls.
Mhm.
So it's not an easy button. The cloud automates a lot of things, and there are monitoring services, there are scans that you can have. You have to know what those things are and how to activate them. But in some ways, it's become, I won't call it autopilot, it's become a semi-autopilot for infrastructure. You still need some expertise, but the day-to-day workload of running infrastructure is less if you've moved to the cloud. It's not zero,
Right.
and the risks are still there. And if you do it sort of with, I'm going to say amateur sort of level, if you do it without the right level of expertise to configure those things and make sure the doors and windows are locked, you run the same kinds of risks as you do if you set up a network without the right level of expertise
Right.
doing that. So yeah, I'm so glad you asked that question because we hear this a lot. Um, I can tell you there have been breaches where people had their customer list, credit card numbers, social security numbers, certainly private information
Right.
out there on the cloud, and someone else was who shouldn't have was able to get access to it.
Right. Right. Jeff, we've covered a lot of stuff here in a short period of time, and we could go on for I'm sure quite a while here. What have I not asked you wish I had?
It's a great question. I guess the idea of relying on a vendor versus insourcing your IT. We get asked this a lot. Um, what's the best answer for a small business, right?
Right.
I would tell you, of course, the answer is it depends. But we have sort of a unique hybrid that we often recommend that it's not one or the other. So you have strengths with a vendor where there's a team of people you're getting, it's a little bit of the fractional value proposition,
Mhm.
right? You have this, we have a problem, submit a ticket, and then they can route it to the appropriate expert. There's a lot of value in that. If you hire one or two people and that's all you have, then you are dependent on what those guys know. And if there's something outside of their expertise, it's very hard to know everything. Actually, back that up. It's impossible to know everything about IT right now. And so, if you're running a shop with one or two people that you've hired directly, and that's all you have, there are huge risks with that. On the other hand, having those people on the org chart, they're in your office, they know your platform, they're not sort of sliced up supporting 100 different customers, and they have no orientation of who you are or what's unique about your setup. So what we find is the best answer on that landscape is at least one person on the org chart full-time who provides support and is sort of a shock absorber and local liaison, if you will. They can do some things themselves. They're technical, but they don't have to be the end all be all. Desk side support, someone to hold the hand of new hires and show them the ropes, right? Have that person in your company as an employee. Then engage the vendor for escalated. So there's MSPs, managed service providers, often want to take over the whole platform. What we call this is co-managed platform. So there's a local person, maybe there's one or two inside the company, and then there's the vendor who is that escalated sort of team of experts that can come in to do the upgrades and the troubleshooting of really complex things. And that's who's going to configure your firewall and so forth and so on. So that's I have an article, actually, the team is putting final touches on this topic, because it's the sweet spot that we really Find for a lot of businesses. Until you get to, if you have 4,000 employees, obviously you've got an internal IT team. It does not make sense any longer for you to pay the profit margin of a vendor to do a lot of things that you have ongoing workload in that area. Just hire the right experts and whittle down your dependency on vendors as you grow. But man, for the smaller, there's a lot of value in having that vendor that you can call on when you need them, because you're going to need them at some point. It doesn't matter how smart your internal resources are, they're not smart enough to know it all.
Right. Definitely. Jeff, appreciate your time today. If people like what they hear and they want to reach out to you, how can they reach out to you?
So our website is innovationvista.com. There's a contact us form there, and we respond to all of that. People ask questions sometimes. It doesn't always need to lead to some engagement where we're invoicing you. We are happy to field questions and just have a quick dialogue with people. I look at this as, it's a marathon, not a sprint. And we help someone like that. Who's to say that when they're talking to a friend the next day and they're talking about IT troubles, they say, we talked to this group, Innovation Vista, and they just answered our question. If you need more help, they were really good to work with. And so that's our goal, just to be good to work with. The website is probably choice number one. I'm also very active on LinkedIn, on there every day, posting information. We try to share some of what we learn, what we see, try to help companies like this conversation very much in line. I try to add value where I can on LinkedIn with comments and articles and posts. So happy to take a message on that as well if people would like to just chat a little bit on some of this.
Okay. Hey, really appreciate your time, Jeff.
Likewise, Gary, really appreciate the invitation.
Thanks. Hey, this week my guest was Jeff Roberts, and he is the founder and CEO of Innovation Vista. I'll see you guys next week.
49 faces looked to him in triumph. Over the last 12 months, they had each taken turns and promoted his business for a week at a time, driving over $987,342 in revenue. What if you had a network of 50 centers of influence who promoted your business every week for a year? Grab your copy of the #1 Amazon best-selling book, The Ultimate Guide to Growing Your Business with a Podcast, at 33% off the Amazon price by going to ultimatepodcastbook.com. Again, that website for 33% off the Amazon price is ultimatepodcastbook.com.